I think that it's extraordinarily objectionable to exclude the occupant of the womb from this as if they weren't candidate members of the human race.
Christopher, I want to say I was tempted to glibly congratulate you for finally getting something right, but I actually want to go much further, and
that's how we met.
I want to commend you for really a courageous statement in this setting. I do want to offer a thought, though. A few times in this debate, you've used the phrase celestial dictatorship, and I think it's a telling phrase because it gets a little bit, I think, to what's going on here. In thinking about this issue of God, we have to ask, what is the reason for our resistance to God? And then what are the reasons we give in public? The reasons we give in public have to do with things like science, and the absence of evidence implies the evidence of absence and this sort of thing. But in reality, that may not be the real source of our opposition. In fact, I don't think it is. I think ultimately it's not that you don't believe in God, and it's not even that you don't believe in the resurrection. I don't even think you care one way or the other. It seems to me that what you really worry about are the strictures of Christian morality. And ultimately, that's probably what a lot of us in the audience also worry about. If Christianity is true, gee, then morality isn't just something I make up as I go along. There really are some commandments I need to follow, and there are certain ways in which I may have to constrict my lifestyle. In other words, I can't live exactly the way I want. The freedom I enjoy in college doesn't necessarily entail complete moral freedom. So Christianity in this sense is viewed not as untrue, but as oppressive, as in a sense being an inconvenience to your life as the way you want to live it. And so you resist it. But now that you resist it, you can't say that you actually don't want to live by a moral code or by an external or a traditional moral code. And so you've got to convince yourself that it's really brilliance that's bringing you to this position and not a resistance to Christian morality. And so you begin to spout off a bunch of physics you don't know, and a bunch of history that you don't know, and a bunch of theology that you don't understand. And it's all aimed at affirming that there is no God, so I don't really have to follow his rules. In a sense, you get rid of the idea of moral judgment by abolishing the judge. So in some senses, I think these debates are not just about winning arguments, they're also about a certain kind of psychological introspection in which we ask we know the motives for belief, right? Wishful thinking. What are the motives for unbelief? What payoff does that give you? Why do you feel better by not believing? I think when we examine these things, we complete the circle that I think this debate began, namely the idea of applying skepticism and criticism in the best way that a university can, which is to say, to make it self-criticism. Thank you.
Well, it seems as if all our, Dinesh's and my, self-denying attempts to spare you our closing perorations have been negated somehow. You're going to get them whether you want them or not. Again, Dinesh is so nearly right, and I'm reminded by the last questioner that we actually first met because when he was working for President Reagan and I was writing for The Nation magazine, I wrote a piece about abortion that called itself to his attention, and he invited me to lunch. Seems like a long time ago now, but it was a nice meeting of minds that time. There's no reason why this one shouldn't be the same, but I don't think I spoke in such a way tonight or on any other occasion or have written in such a way as to lay myself open to that last piece of misrepresentation. It is certainly true that I consider that the question of liberty of the mind is involved in the repudiation of theism. Yes, I think that we would be living in a celestial dictatorship if we accepted the authority scripturally revealed of a divine will. And I think this not because under the inconvenient scrutiny of this eye, I'm not free to rape and pillage and lie as I might wish, because there are other things, I assure you, as I'm sure you will say for yourselves, for those of you with any self-respect, that stop me from doing that. But because, and I don't mind admitting this is true, once you grant that there's been a revelation of God to some humans, sometimes, in some places, to be interpreted by a priesthood, then the next thing you will find is that you are being told what to do, what to eat, what you can read, who you can go to bed with, by someone who is no better a mammal or primate than yourself, but who claims to be doing this who claims the right to run your life and your sex life and your mind and your reading matter in the name of God. And I won't have it, okay? And the next thing they'll tell you, the next thing they'll ask you for, the next thing, just be a little thing, is, well, go and live on this piece of someone else's territory. God wants you to settle it. The next thing will be, you're called to holy war now because we can't coexist with the infidel. The next thing will be that. Let it in once, and you let it in, all of it. Of all the questions of mine that Dinesh didn't even attempt to answer this evening, because we were talking not about Christianity, but about religion, was, is this only true for one sect, or is it true for all of them? If it's only true for one, on what grounds is that the case? If it's true for all of them, where would that leave us as a species? Think on these things, ladies and gentlemen. Think on these things as you go home. Thank you.
As the opening speaker, I get the chance to very briefly close, and
You do?
these are some very old rules. They might be Christian rules, but they also have been embedded in Western civilization for a long
Calling
time.
a lot on my Christian forbearance.
Besides, they're on our program. I'll be very brief. First of all, I do want to say that that statement I made a moment ago was not directed at you. I was actually doing something that is traditionally done in debate. I was actually turning the camera to the audience, and I was actually asking, particularly young people, that we know that college is the time when many people who are raised with religious beliefs relinquish them. And one possible explanation is that young people go to science classes and just get a heck of a lot smarter. But there is a second explanation, and that is that you are living in a condition where morality becomes an encumbrance, and religion becomes inconvenient and begins to say things that you would rather not believe, and prescribes ways of living that you'd rather not live. Now, Christopher Hitchens implies that this is done by force. I think you know from your own life it is not. It is not. The reason that you want to shake off religion is because it is not done by force. It is only done by your own consent. So in other words, in some senses, this is the Christian way. Are you made to follow it? No. You have every freedom to do it. Even in Islam, by the way. Islam is easily maligned, I know. But even in Islam, as someone who grew up in a world that's largely Hindu and Muslim, Islam has all kinds of sanctions, licenses for conquest. But what it does not give license for is forcible conversion to Islam. That is specifically forbidden. Now, the point I'm trying to get at here is we may or may not, in both cases, we are asked to make a voluntary choice. And I think in making this choice, there have to be consequences. All we're saying is there are good reasons to be a believer. It's not obvious what comes after death. Ultimately, you have to look at the world and your place in it and make your decision. But just remember, ultimately, that it is your own happiness that is at issue. And it's the claim of religious believers, not that you are forced into it, but that if you accept it, ultimately you live a more complete, a more balanced, a more decent, a more just, and yes, a more happy life. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, I think I speak for everyone here by saying it's been a real privilege to have you with us tonight. I don't think anybody here will forget this night for a long time. Thank you. Great job. Tremendous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.